Asia and the Pacific Rim 2024. I'll be serving as the MC today. I'm from the Japan College of Social Work. My name is Arimura. So we'd now like to start session 1. First, from the Japan College of Social Work, we have Professor Sachiko Takeuchi for some opening remarks. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am the head of the Social Work Research Institute of the Japan College of Social Work. My name is Sachiko Takeuchi. I am very pleased to have so many people attending this event co-organized between the University of New South Wales and JCSW, entitled International Seminar on Social Welfare in Asia and the Pacific Rim 2024. This international seminar has been held every year here at JCSW by inviting many people from many countries. Due to COVID, we have been closed, but last year we restarted, and this will be the 27th international seminar. And this year, we have the theme of Joint Workshop on Australian and Japanese Social Work Field Education in the Global Era. And from Japan and Australia, we have faculty members involved in field education, people who provide opportunities for field education at their facilities, and also students who have actually gone out for field education. So I'd like to thank all these speakers as well as the audience for your cooperation. So more than 300 people have registered to take part in this seminar. It's not just from Australia and Japan, but from India, Asia, North America, Africa, Latin America, Europe, and the Middle East. We have people who are active in social welfare, as well as students who are studying this field, and also high school students who are interested in studying social welfare. So we do hope that this seminar provides an opportunity for new learning. Lastly but not least, I would like to thank the sponsors, the National Consumers Cooperative Union of Japan and Community Chest of Japan, and our supporters, the Japanese Association for Social Work Education, Japanese Federation of Social Workers, Japanese Society for the Study of Social Welfare Education, and the Japanese Society for the Study of Social Work. I would like to also take this opportunity to thank Professor Marie Higgins and all the faculty members and staff from the University of New South Wales, and also the people here at JCSW. Once again, thank you very much for those attending and also for the speakers. We do hope that this will become a very fruitful workshop. And with that, I would like to end my opening remarks.
Thank you very much. And then next item is to talk about the overview of today's workshop. And I would like to invite Dr. Victor Virag. Good morning, everyone. And good afternoon for you in Australia. And for those people from Europe and America and people from the world, good evening, greetings. So now I would like to briefly explain about the overview of today's workshop. First of all, this is the housekeeping matters. The Secretariat, unfortunately, will not be able to provide the operational support for the webinar. And as you can see, we have a simultaneous interpretation service for this seminar today. In your Zoom screen, there is a language button, so please select the language of your choice. And together with the URL, we have sent you the manual in a PDF, so please refer to that as well. And for the materials, mine are in bilingual, but basically the materials that will be posted into this screen will be in a language that is spoken by the speaker. So if you need the other language, please take a look at the translated version from the URL that we have sent you the other day. And a Q&A button, please use this. And if you're in this room, please use the papers to submit your questions. And this seminar is co-hosted by 2 universities. And as was mentioned earlier by Professor Takeuchi, 4 organizations are supporting this workshop, and those 2 organizations have sponsored us. So taking this opportunity, I would like to thank you all for your cooperation. And me, the Virag from the JCSW, I am the coordinator in Japan side, but I have a very encouraging colleague from the Australia, Professor Murray Higgins. Thank you very much for your cooperation as well. So this is the schedule for today. The first section is already started. So we are giving you the workshop outline right now. And after this, the overview of the field education from the 2 universities will be presented 20 minutes each, and then we are going to have 10 minutes recess, and then we will be entering into the session 2. And this is a highlight of today's workshop. That is for the reports from the students who have experienced the field education. And the presentation will be given by students as well as the faculty member and the field instructors. And they are given 20 minutes each for the presentation. And we have a 20 minutes break in the middle. And as you can see in this red highlight, we will be answering your questions, but the submission of the question deadline is at the end of the last report D from the JCSW. For those people who are in this room, please submit the papers to me by end of the 4th presentation. And I have to say in front that we will not be able to answer all the questions since we have 300 participants. And after a short break, we are going to have a section 3 and 4. Session 3, all the reporters will be coming up on the stage to have a discussion and Q&A. And the coordinator from the University of New South Wales is going to coordinate this. And then after that, we are planning to have the session for conclusion. So what is the issue behind this background? Well, the globalization is happening. The social is changing, and we thought that education needs to change accordingly. And based on this, in this global era, we have to have the social workers as a professional who can serve in this changing world. We have to develop such kind of talents. So this time we are going to have reports from the 2 countries, but to mutually learn from the educational practice from each other is the purpose. So the students as well as the faculty members and the field instructors are going to give us the reports. And with this workshop, we are hoping to have a more stronger and the common ground for the future collaboration between the 2 universities. And this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we would like to proceed to hearing from the University of New South Wales. Let us ask them to give us the overview of field education. Professor Philip Evans, Dr. Robin Ev, and Dr. Martina Josephson, please.
I have the great pleasure of introducing the University of New South Wales field education team. Martina is a University of New South Wales alumni who graduated with a Bachelor of Social Work, Bachelor of Social Sciences in 2015. Since then, Martina has worked in a range of non-government organisations in the fields of forced migration with refugees and people seeking asylum, and with women and families impacted by family and domestic violence. This included working on a project with women on temporary visas in Australia experiencing sexual and gender-based violence. After supervising social work students on placements in her previous roles, Martina joined the University of New South Wales in 2022 as a Work Integrated Learning Officer for Social Work, and has recently also taken on the responsibility of social science and social research and policy internships alongside social work placements. Robin graduated from the University of New South Wales with a Bachelor of Social Work in 1986. Since graduating, Robin has worked with a number of different organisations in government and non-government and private sectors, both in Australia and overseas. Robin has over 35 years of experience in a number of different fields, including disability, consultancy, education, immigration, forced migration, and human trafficking. Robin joined the University of New South Wales in 2019 in the social work field education space, having been a field educator for a number of years. Robin's roles and responsibilities at the University of New South Wales include social work placements and, more recently, internships in the social sciences and social research and policy space. Robin and Martina are both passionate about field education, drawing inspiration from working alongside future generations of social workers. Welcome, Robin and Martina.
Thank you. Please speak as close to the microphone as you can.
Konnichiwa. Good morning and welcome to our presentation about the University of New South Wales Social Work Field Education Program. My colleague Martina and I will be presenting this morning and look forward to providing you with information about our team and the work that we undertake in the field education space. It's lovely to reconnect with some of our Japanese colleagues with whom we initially met last year when you visited our university. And great to see and meet so many more people who have joined today, both in person and online. Thank you for inviting us to be part of this important workshop, and we look forward to sharing with you a little bit about our program and the work that we do. We'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. We would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Bedegal people of the Eora Nation, and recognise the continuing connection to lands, waters and communities. We pay our respects to elders past and present. We also extend our welcome to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present here or online today.
So the next slide really introduces our team. As a team, we work together to support students throughout the placement journey. We strongly believe in collaborating to bring about the best outcomes for students, and acknowledge that we cannot do this work well in isolation. As you can see, there are a number of people that make up our team. This consists of the program director, Marie Higgins, and as you know, Marie has been instrumental in developing this workshop, and you'll hear from her about her role throughout the day. Also the placement course convener, field educators, which are also known as supervisors in the field or in the agency. Dr. Philippa Evans, the Director of Will and Student Experience, who you've also just met. The Will or Work Integrated Learning Officers, Robin and I, and our role straddles social work placements as well as social science internships and social research and policy internships. We also have the Will or Work Integrated Learning Operations team that involves background administrative functions, compliance, enrolments, confirmation documents, and insurance. Our liaison tutors, who are a conduit between the student and the agency as well as the university, and who support and assess student learning throughout the placement. And finally, our ESG, or external group supervisors, providing regular professional social work supervision to students without an on-site social worker as a supervisor to enable them or the placement to meet AASW requirements.
We're just going to talk a little bit about the goals that our team has in working in the field education space. So as you can see up on the slide, we've listed those. So we're just going to talk about them a little bit in more detail and flesh them out a little bit. So first of all, we aim to provide secure, meaningful, safe and quality field placement experiences. As qualified social workers with extensive experience in the field, the WIL team, or the Work Integrated Learning Team, has the skills to engage, network and form relationships with agencies to facilitate unique and challenging placements for students. We seek opportunities for meaningful learning experiences where students are actively involved in the organisation and placement tasks, whether this be in a direct, indirect, or a mixed social work experience. The second goal that's listed on the slide that you can all see is student-centred practice. So we aim to provide a student-centred practice. Our field education program caters to a diverse group of students, including international students, students who identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, students who are part of the LGBTQIA+ communities, students with diverse learning needs, and students with long-term lived experiences. The WIL team approaches all student placements in a student-centred way, ensuring that we fit the students' needs. For students who identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander and international students, we provide additional support and supervision as required. This includes cultural supervision and a pre-program for students who identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, and liaison with the university's Indigenous student engagement and support specialist. For international students, we tailor their placement experience to an agency where they feel challenged, but also safe. We also are able to provide international students with information about support services on campus around such issues as conditions of their visas, accommodation, employment, health, and social connection. For students who have additional support needs or who experience additional challenges, we can link them to our support services on campus, such as the Equitable Learning Service or the Equity, Diversity and Inclusion Service. In terms of the next goal on the slide, we have a strength-based approach to our practice. We believe in using strength-based or asset-based approaches. We focus on student strengths, which includes personal strengths and social and community networks, and not on their deficits when working alongside them to secure a placement opportunity. Next, we strive to work in a solutions-focused way. Our solutions-focused approach and problem-solving skills allows us to work effectively and holistically with a range of stakeholders and respond to any concerns while students are completing the field education component of their social work degree. We aim for a collaborative approach with all stakeholders. As qualified social workers with extensive experience working in the field, our skills in relationship building allow for the development and maintenance of mutually beneficial relationships with agencies and field educators. We aim to foster relationships with our field educators. The team's diverse knowledge and active engagement with different sectors has allowed the formation of innovative partnerships, including with agencies where social work is new and emerging in the space. We aim to provide dynamic and evolving practice in recognition of social work practice now being carried out by a range of different organisations in a range of different roles, some of which do not fit the traditional social work space and practice. We are forming relationships with very diverse range of agencies. The range of placement options available to students has diversified enormously over recent years. For example, recent placement opportunities for students include environmental social work, placements in the diversity and inclusion space, community development and community action, work in the culturally and linguistically diverse space with trade unions, in international social work, etc. In addition, as more students are undertaking dual degrees, we actively seek placement opportunities whereby students can gain skills and knowledge in areas that fall within their coursework, including criminology, social sciences, and law. Finally, we aim to gain student feedback to inform evaluation and quality improvement of our program. WIL staff fulfil liaison tutor and external supervision roles, which enables the team to do quality assurance, to stay in touch with the field and respond to students regarding expectations and duty of care. We also run feedback sessions at the mid and end of placement points with all students, but paying particular attention to students who have unique needs, such as students who identify as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander and international students.
So we would now like to give an overview of social work placements at UNSW. For those who are not familiar with the Bachelor of Social Work program, we'll provide some information to set the context. All students complete a Bachelor of Social Work with honours at UNSW. A number of students also complete a double degree, for example, social work with criminology, social work with social sciences, social work with law, or social work with arts, to give a few examples. As part of the 4-year Bachelor of Social Work program, students undertake 2 placement periods, one in their 3rd year of their Bachelor of Social Work program and one in their 4th and final year. Each year, our level 3 or 3rd year students undertake their placement from February to June, while the level 4 or 4th year students undertake their placements from July to November. 4th year students have the option to complete either a domestic, a rural and remote, or a school-approved international placement. Students complete 500 hours per placement period, which equals approximately 70 days per placement. And this 500 hours includes placement hours in the field, in addition to placement seminar hours and coursework. Students attend placement Monday to Thursday and university classes on Fridays. In recognition of the diverse needs and circumstances of students, we offer a variation of placement or 3-day-a-week placement. This could be due to a number of considerations, including caring responsibilities, paid employment, additional courses, and we're mindful that this can impact on students' ability to engage in placement 4 days a week. This also lends itself to our student-centered approach to placements. To be eligible for placement, students are required to have completed a number of prerequisite courses covering theory and practice, social work at the micro, meso, and macro levels.
We'd now like to provide some information about the placement process we have developed. The steps of this are listed on the slide, as you can see, and include a student information session, pre-placement meetings with students, gaining expressions of interest from agencies, matching students with an agency, students interviewing at an agency, placement confirmation, allocation of a liaison tutor, and the provision of ongoing support throughout the placement. To ensure the delivery of high-quality field education programs, the WIL team works proactively with students well ahead of each placement period. For example, in February, we started working closely with the Level 4 students who are due to commence their placement in July. For students who may be interested in a domestic, rural or international placement, we run an information session the year before in recognition of the increased amount of time that it can take to organise these. After holding an information session for the cohort, we meet with students and match students based on the information they provide us with and their areas of interest alongside the learning opportunities being offered by the agency. We also match liaison tutors to students according to their skills and knowledge, expertise in the field of practice and capacity to value add to the student's placement experience. The liaison tutors play an important role in dynamically assessing for safety, ethical engagement, and support of student learning competencies in relation to the Australian Association of Social Work Standards throughout their placements.
When matching students to placement opportunities, the team takes into consideration a number of things, including students' learning goals, their areas of interest, previous experience, geographic location, including where they're living, where the agency is located and how they'll travel to placement, potential safety concerns, and AASW requirements, with the ability to reallocate students where any issues or concerns are raised. Following students being matched to an agency, they're then asked to contact field educators for an interview. If both the student and field educator feel the student is a good fit, then the placement is confirmed and the necessary documents and agreements are sent. Once students are allocated to a placement opportunity, they're provided a liaison tutor, and in some cases, an external supervisor who's experienced in the field of practice and can add value and support the student in linking theory to practice throughout their placement. For students needing additional support, including international students, the Work Integrated Learning team are able to provide support with preparing for interviews as well as throughout their placement.
Ongoing support of students is an integral part of the placement process and is provided by the course convener, the liaison tutor, the field educator, members of the Work Integrated Learning team, and the support services at the University of New South Wales as needed.
So in summary, we understand the importance of regular and quality communication between different teams to achieve the best quality outcomes for social work students. We recognise that in order to ensure quality placements for students that successfully integrate field education with the social work program, we must work collaboratively with a range of stakeholders, including academic staff, work integrated learning staff, field educators, liaison tutors, agencies hosting students, as well as students themselves. To provide a quality field education program, we need to build meaningful relationships with all of these stakeholders.
We would like to thank you for listening to our presentation this morning about Social Work Field Education Program at University of New South Wales. Martina and I are both passionate about this space and could talk for much longer on the topic. We know that it's a very tight schedule for today with many interesting topics on the agenda, and so have provided you with a snapshot or a taste of the work that we do. We hope that the information we have provided has been informative and useful. Both Martina and I welcome any questions you may have and urge you to forward these as directed so that we can answer these after the workshop has finished. We would like to acknowledge the work that has gone on behind the scenes in the organisation of today and give a special thanks to the interpreters who are working in the simultaneous interpretation space to maximise the opportunity of engagement for people attending from Japan.
Arigato.
Philippa Evans.
Thank you very much, Professor Philippa Evans, Dr. Robin Webb, and Ms. Martina Josephson for explaining about the system and also the overview of the field education at your university. Next, from JCSW, we would like to receive a presentation on the overview of field education at JCSW. We have Professor Mikio Hishinuma for the presentation. Yes, thank you very much. I am the director of the Certified Social Worker Field Education Center at JCSW. My name is Hishinuma, and I would like to make the report. So today I will be looking at the national qualification for social workers in Japan, as well as the social work education at our university and practical training and instructions. First, the nationally recognized qualification of social workers here in Japan. As national qualifications, we have the certified social worker and psychiatric social worker. But I'll explain about the certified social worker. According to the Japanese law, it is defined as follows. A certified social worker means a person with expert knowledge and skills who provides advice, guidance, or welfare services and consultations about the welfare of a person with physical disabilities or mental disorder, and intellectual disabilities, or persons facing difficulty in leading a normal life due to environmental factors, and a person engaged in the business of communicating, coordinating with, and providing other assistance to doctors, other health and medical service providers, and other related parties. Next, I would like to look at the certified social workers and the route to get qualified as a social worker. So, in order to take the national examination, there are 11 different routes, and our university provides Route 1 through a 4-year social welfare university. We provide designated courses which students will take in order to get qualified to take the examination. So, all students will be qualified to take the national examination when they graduate. Now, looking at the curriculum. So in order to become a social worker, there are 23 subjects that has to be covered. There are 19 subjects for lecture, 2 exercises, and also practical guidance, as well as practical experience. So please look at the handouts for the curriculum. And the curriculum adds up to 1,200 hours. And there are 240 hours of practical experience. Next, about the social work education at JCSW. This slide shows the subjects to be covered from the 1st to 4th year. So at our university, the first semester is from April to July, and from September to January is the second semester. In the first and second year, students will go through lectures for social work, and from the second year, first semester, they will have some exercises in social work. In the second semester of the second year, practical guidance will start, and 60 hours of social work practical experience is to be covered. In the third year, social work practical guidance 2 will start, and 180 hours worth of practical experience will also be covered. And there is some corrections to be made in the previously distributed items. The corrections are written in red. Practical social work 1 is 60 hours, and practical social work is 180 hours. And in the third year, social work practical guidance 2 will be covered. Now, at our university, from the second year to third year, when you are promoted from second to third year, if social work courses are not covered, you will not be able to be promoted to the third year grade. Next, the aims and purpose of social work practical experience. Social workers fall under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare. And according to the curriculum, the aims and purpose of social work practical experience is written as well, there are actually 5 points, but the first one is integrate the knowledge and skills acquired in each subject required for practical application of social work and develop practical skills to provide support based on values and ethics as a social worker. And there are 4 other points. Please refer to the handouts. And the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare points out 10 things to be included in the social work practical experience. So I won't go into detail here, but mainly it is about establishing smooth interpersonal relationship with the users and their families, and also to understand the local community where these people live in, and also learn about the management and team approach at the practical experience host facilities and organizations. And also, the law stipulates what facilities and organizations can provide these practical experiences. This slide does not cover all facilities, but they are the major ones. Welfare offices and child consultation centers, as well as social welfare facilities that are managed by social welfare organizations will be among some of the organizations that could serve as the host organizations. But of course, these facilities need to have qualified staff to provide guidance and supervision who have taken courses about providing these guidances. Also, the host facilities and organizations, the clients of the organizations, as well as local residents, we need their cooperation for these practical experiences. Also, the university facility and the students, the relationship between the 4 players will become very important. Also, the university, when it provides guidance, there is guidance before, during, and after the practical experience. And now I'd like to explain about what happens during these guidances. So in the guidance before the experience and also the learning before the guidances, there are 7 points to understand the curriculum and the aim and purpose for the experience. Also, to understand the laws that are related to the host facilities and organizations. Also, understanding the issues and topics related to the field and area of practical training, and also learning about the characteristics of the region where the training will occur. 5th, knowledge about consultation assistance, about the Code of Ethics and BISTEC's 7 principles of social casework. 6th is skills related to consultation assistance, like interviews, assessments, support plans, and mapping. And based on that, based on one's interest, the training plans will be created. And you have to understand the theme, the reason for setting the themes, and challenges to be addressed. Now, about the guidance to be provided during the training. At least once every 6 days, the faculty is to provide guidance according to the Minister of Health, Labor and Welfare. The faculty may visit the host organization, and the student may come back to the university to receive guidance. And at least once during the training period, our faculty will visit the host organization and interview the staff there. During the practical training, there are 5 points to be considered. One is to understand the trainee's mental and physical condition, and also make sure that the student is taking notes and records about their training. That will be confirmed through interviews with the student. Also, looking at the notes, records, and what the student says, try to identify the challenges ahead, and also understand what the student wants to do during the remainder of the time of the practical training. And confirmation of administrative procedures in the practical training will also be done. Next, concerning the evaluation of the training. We have 16 points for evaluation. First, to understand the situation related to the client's overall life, also understanding the client's capabilities and also what are the issues that the client has. Also understanding the client's family and social relationships. Also taking interest in the emotions and feelings of the client. And fifth is engaging with the client. And sixth, accepting and understanding the client's feelings and actions. And also understanding the guidance from the training staff. Eighth, attempting to convey opinions and questions to the training staff. Ninth is attempting to understand staff allocation and the organization at the training venue. Also, 10th, showing an interest in building relationship with other staff members. 11, attempting to form relationships with staff members other than those directly providing practical training. 12th, trying to be mindful of one's own emotions and feelings. And 13, attempting to express emotions to users and staff and articulate feelings in words. 14, trying to examine one's own feelings. And 15, contemplating the current social welfare system. And 16, seeking out future topics for learning that are best for the students or trainee. So this evaluation will be done in the middle of the practical training and then towards the end. So there are 2 evaluations, and this will be done to the supervisor as well as the student. And by having evaluated both, we will be able to identify any challenges or issues ahead. Now, the evaluation is not about whether or not the students have cleared all these items. We are looking at whether or not the student and also the host organization had made effort to achieve these goals. Because the time for training is very limited, it may not be possible to acquire everything. So the evaluation is looking at the attitude of both sides in trying to attain these goals. And now about the guidance that is provided after the practical training. Each student will provide a report and also will make presentations. And this presentation is not going to be done on an individual basis. It will be done as a group. As was explained earlier, the aims and purposes of the practical experience stipulated by the national government is quite broad and wide. Therefore, it may not be covered during the very short practical training period. Therefore, by learning from others who went to different host organizations, students can share their experience and learnings. And the students will form groups to make presentations on certain themes. And by listening to other group presentations, students will be able to deepen their understanding and learning from a broader perspective. And also, students who will be going out for practical training in the next year will also be listening to the presentation. They will be able to understand what kind of practical training they will be receiving and what kind of learning they are expected to get. And also at the presentation, we have the practical training supervisors and instructors come as well. And there will be an exchange of opinion between faculty as well as the host organization staff so that we can identify if there were any challenges, problems, or issues during the practical training, and in order to improve for the next year. Now, the students through this practical training will develop their skills greatly. And of course, this cannot be possible without the host organization supervisors and staff, and therefore I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for all you have done for our students. And of course, we have received a lot of support for this international seminar as well. And we will be hearing from the student side as well as the host organization side later, so I'd like to end my presentation here. Thank you very much.
菱沼教授、どうも。
Thank you very much, Professor Hishinuma. So we are a little bit ahead of the schedule, but we would like to take about 10 minutes break now. So we will be resuming from 5 to 10 Japan time and 5 to 11 Sydney time. So 9:55 in Japan and 11:55 in Sydney. That's the time that we are going to resume. So see you in 10 minutes.
はい、それでは。
So it is time. So we would like to resume and start the session 2. The session 2 is both from GCSW and University of New South Wales are going to give us the presentation or the report on the practical training. First, from the University of New South Wales, Ms. Ashley Liu, and the principal solicitor of the Shopfront Youth Legal Center, Ms. Jane Sanders, and the lecturer, Jenny Graves. Please start your report.
To one of my students, Ashley, and then to Jane to introduce themselves.
Take two.
Hello and greetings from Sydney, Australia. My name is Jenny Graves, and what a privilege to talk with you all in the room and also in Japan and other countries joining the workshop today. My name is Jenny Graves, and I'm a lecturer at University of New South Wales. And part of my role is convening the field education subjects. So that involves working in collaboration with the team that some of the team you've already met this morning and will meet over the course of the workshop. And of course, the students and providing the on-campus seminars and tutorials. I'd like to introduce my co-panelists today. I'll pass on the microphone first to Ashley, a student at University of New South Wales, and then to Jane from a placement agency who welcomes social work students.
Thanks, Jenny. My name is Ashley. I am a sixth-year law and social work student. And I just want to say thank you for having the opportunity to talk in front of the in the workshop here today.
Ohayo gozaimasu. My name is Jane Sanders. I am a lawyer and I'm the principal solicitor at the Shopfront Youth Legal Center. And we have welcomed social work students from UNSW, including the wonderful Ashley. And you'll learn a little bit more about the Shopfront today.
I did want to acknowledge country that we're meeting on today as well. And it's the land, the Bidjigal or Bidagal people. And I'll share with you this beautiful photo that was actually taken on Bondi Beach, and a beautiful Aboriginal traditional story about how the birds got their colours. And I love this image. I went to this event with my daughter, and we loved sitting there on Bondi Beach and having these performers. And when I look at this picture, I think of all of the students who go off on placements and have their own journeys in many incredible agencies that we have in Australia, and the experiences they get in the workforce and developing as social workers. Our presentation will have Jane give an explanation about the shopfront and her service. We'll also hear from Ashley about her experience as a student at the shopfront. And we'll also talk a little bit about some of the support structures such as supervision and the on-campus tutorials and seminars that happen, both with placement and also a subject we call organisational practice, which happens after placement as well. So I'll hand over to Jane now to tell you a little bit more about the Shopfront Youth Legal Centre.
Thanks, Jenny. The shop front, that is our front door there on the slide, it is a legal service for homeless and disadvantaged young people. We work with young people, children under 18, but also young adults aged up to 25. The shop front was established in 1993 as a response to the problem of youth homelessness in Australia, and especially the human rights violations that homeless young people were experiencing. It is a partnership between a law firm, Herbert Smith Freehills, which is now a global law firm, but it started off just as an Australian law firm. The other members of the partnership are both non-government organisations. One of them is the Salvation Army and the other one is Mission Australia. So all of those three organisations provide funding and employ staff to work at the shopfront. I think next slide. So I've said a little bit about the history. The shopfront has been going for 31 years now. It was started up by some lawyers at Freehills who got together with some people at Mission Australia, which is a NGO working with, it works a lot with young people, with people experiencing homelessness. It provides family support, support for people experiencing domestic violence. It provides sometimes early childhood services, family services. It is a very big organisation. So 30 years ago, these lawyers at Freehills decided they wanted to do a pro bono project. I don't know if that translates into Japanese, but lawyers doing free work for the community. And they decided that homeless young people were a group of people who were really missing out on legal services and legal rights. So they got together with Mission Australia and set up this service. It started with just two people, one lawyer and one legal assistant. It has now grown. We have 8 staff, a mixture of lawyers, social workers, and others. And then we also have a lot of students, including social work students and law students. Our mission and our clients. So our mission, our objective, is to make sure that young people get access to good quality legal services and also non-legal services, social services, housing, social work, health services, counselling, support for education and employment. In Australia, we have a public legal aid system where people who are appearing in court get access to a lawyer at court. We also have some community legal centres which provide free legal advice to people on low incomes. But young people often find it very hard to reach community legal centres. They find legal aid sometimes very difficult. If the first time they meet their lawyer is at court, it is sometimes very intimidating and difficult for a young person. Also, it's important for young people who are experiencing homelessness that their lawyer works very closely with other youth services to make sure that the young person is supported with all aspects of their life. So our clients are mostly the young people who have very complex needs, as we say. So they may be homeless, they may have mental health problems, they have had a lot of trauma in their lives, they may have experienced domestic violence, sexual abuse, they may have problems with alcohol or other drugs, and they need a lot of support, not just from their lawyer, but from other services. So the kind of services we provide, they are on the slide, so I probably don't need to read them all, but we do a lot of court representation for young people who are charged with criminal offences. That could be things like stealing, shoplifting, for young people who are hungry or they're living in poverty and they can't afford basic items. In Japan, I think this is also a problem, but in Australia particularly, the cost of living is very expensive, and people who do not have a full-time job find it very difficult to, if they are relying on government benefits, find it very difficult to live on that. So we have a lot of offending of that type. Also sometimes offending related to family problems. So maybe family violence type offences, sometimes minor drug offences, all sorts of things. Also, we have a lot of young people being targeted by the police. They have very negative experiences with the police. This can sometimes lead to young people being arrested for resisting police, assaulting police, and offences like that. We defend a lot of young people on those kinds of charges. Mostly, or many of those charges are dismissed, meaning our clients are found not guilty because the police were acting, using too much force or wrongfully arresting our clients. So we deal with police misconduct also. As well as court representation, we provide a lot of legal advice and also social work support and referrals and legal education. I think it's time to hand over to Ashley to talk a bit about what our social work students do at the Shopfront.
So as Jane mentioned, one of the Shopfront's employees is a caseworker. This is an in-house caseworker that works with the Shopfront in our office. So as a student, Saqib, our caseworker, was my supervisor and field educator. And as a student, I provided assistance to the casework management that our caseworker was doing. This included a broad range of tasks, including finding temporary accommodation for our clients. As Jane mentioned, many of our clients face homelessness or risk of homelessness. And at times we found this task very difficult because on top of the living crisis, in Sydney in particularly, there's also a housing crisis. So a lot of young people are finding it very difficult to access safe and secure accommodation. Other tasks that I assisted in included seeking financial assistance for our clients. As Jane mentioned, a lot of our clients don't have access to high or stable income and rely on government support and benefits. So some of these supports can be from the National Disability Insurance Scheme that we have in Australia. This is some funding and support for our clients who experienced disabilities, which a broad base of our clients do have. Another material and financial resource we try to help our clients access is a program called Transition to Independent Living Assistance. So for clients who have been in the care and foster care system, once they turn 18, they are no longer part of that system. And so the funding is to help them set their lives up once they leave that system. Other tasks included finding material resources. So just access to simple things such as clothing and food and furniture once clients end up finding accommodation. Other general tasks included linking clients to support services, so mental health services, counselling, alcohol and drug support services. As a student, I also had the chance to attend appointments and court matters with our clients to support them. So sometimes because of their disability or their history of negative experiences with institutions, such as Centrelink, just having a caseworker there to support them throughout their appointment might be helpful. And court cases are naturally very stressful, so just having that support there from a caseworker can be very comforting for our clients. Outside of my work with clients, I also contributed to the Shopfront's internal resources, so developing the information that we have for staff and students. In particular, I contributed to a document providing information on alcohol and other drugs programs and support services. And another one was a traffic offender program. So in New South Wales, we have these programs that teach more road rules. So traffic offenders can learn from their infringements. And finally, on the level of policy and advocacy, this was something I was very grateful to be a part of, but I worked with Jane and another student to draft a submission to the Australian Human Rights Commission. They opened up submissions seeking information and suggestions and recommendations about youth justice and child wellbeing reform. And in particular, because of our service, where we are placed to help young people and their interactions with the criminal justice system, we raised our observations from working with these clients and how closely the care system and the foster care system can interact with the criminal justice system, as well as overall disadvantage in poverty and adverse childhood experiences, as well as early drug exposure and alcohol exposure.
We just want to talk a little bit about the supervision and support that occurs for our social work students on placement. So often students will be in an organisation where there is a social worker, and we ask that social workers have 2 years experience post-graduation before they become a supervisor or field educator. So we have in this situation, we had Sakib Mushtaq, who was the field educator and a social worker on site. For people who are not in that situation in other agencies, we also have external supervision groups that can happen online or face-to-face. So they have an on-site field educator and they have a social work supervisor in the supervision group. The task supervision, you've met Jane here. So she's very much involved with students on placement and involved alongside Saqib, the field educator. And also Ashley was fortunate to go to the casework meetings that occur both at Shopfront and in the in Mission Australia as well that Jane mentioned before.
So in addition to my support at the Shopfront, I was also very lucky because I was completing my placement with 2 other students. They weren't from UNSW, but they were also completing their field education component for their degrees at the Shopfront. So that having 2 other students with me provided a great form of support because we could work on tasks together and we could debrief and discuss our experiences at placement together. And outside of that, at UNSW, I was also very lucky to have external supervision. My supervisor was a very supportive and lovely lady named Tali, and she provided a space for us to kind of reflect on everything that we've learned and experienced while on placement, but also connect theory, which is something that I didn't think too much about while I was on placement, but in my supervision group and in my tutorial and seminar groups, we got to link what we did in placement to the theories that we learned. And that can be something that escapes our mind when we're on placement because we're too focused on the tasks. And yes, I was very lucky to have so much support around me.
And just lastly, we also do a subject called organizational practice, which happens later in the year after the first placement. And this is really about social work students understanding organizations and also how to influence organizations. So I won't talk to all these points on the slide because we're out of time, but thank you so much for participating. And I'll thank my co-panelists, Jane and Ashley, on this lovely Sydney Saturday, and we'll say goodbye and look forward to the rest of the workshop. Arigatou gozaimasu.
アシュリー
Thank you to all 3 of you. Thank you very much indeed. And next, we'd like to have from JCSW a report on the field education experience. Haruna Doki, and also from the Tokyo Doho Engokai, Deputy Director Takashi Sekiguchi, and Associate Professor Isao Uemura, please. Good morning, good afternoon. I am from JCSW. I am supporting their field work. I am Uemura, a faculty member. Thank you. I am very grateful to have this very precious opportunity. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce the other 2 speakers briefly. I'll have them introduce themselves. I am the 4th-year student, Department of Clinical Social Work, Faculty of Social Welfare at JCSW, Haruna Doki. And I am from the Tokyo Doho Engokai Tachikawa Welfare Workshop. I'm Deputy Director. My name is Sekiguchi. Hello. And I'm Uemura. And now I would like to explain the theme. I would like to talk about the engaging in social work with a focus on ability to observe. Now, this is the outline of the presentation. Doki is a student, but she worked at
practical facility, a daycare facility for relatively severe intellectually disabled persons. Not only Ms. Doki, but students have not experience working, and therefore, when they do their field education, there are a number of things that they feel pressure for, and also many times perplexed. Also, 180 hours. Time is limited, and therefore, within this time frame, I have to identify which capabilities it is important for them to develop. We can't do everything, so I'm constantly thinking of which abilities would be best to develop. And there, I concluded that we should be focused on ability to observe and also do practical training. Well, and therefore today there will be an explanation on what she has learned through this practical training. And from Mr. Sekiguchi, he will be assessing, and we would like to observe what happened. So, first about the agency, the placement agency. Sekiguchi-san, please. This is Sekiguchi. Now, about the placement agency, the training location. Well, mainly this is a facility for persons with intellectual disabilities, including autism. There are 14 users, of which 10 have difficulty with verbal communication. And other than those with intellectual disabilities, there are those who have both intellectual and physical disabilities, 26 in total. And there are 26 in wheelchairs, of which 80 people have difficulty with verbal communication. So the combined total, the users who have only intellectual disabilities and those with both intellectual and physical, in total, there are 40 people. And the users are aged from 18 to 51. The average age is 35. Now, all users live at home with their families, and the facility provides a bus for travel to and from their home. Now, about the activities taking place at the placement agency training facility, when Doki-san came, was still during the pandemic, and therefore eating out and going out to shop and using the train, all these activities had to be canceled. But gradually, we tried to return to normal activities, and most outdoor activities were taking walks or using the bus that I explained to go on a drive. So those were the main outdoor activities. And meanwhile, the activities indoors at the facility for those wheelchair users, there were such things, physical condition training such as stretching or using other motor functions and walkers. Other than that, there were creative activities such as pottery and weaving, and seasonal events like Tanabata, which is a star event, and also Christmas party, Star Festival event, that is. And the impression of Doki-san, how she took it, yes, she thought that the users, they were very cheerful and lively and greeted people very nicely. And also the users were active communication with users. And she also, on her side, was noticing things that were very small, trivial things. And she was always keen to ask questions to the staff there that she noticed. And I think this is unique about Doki-san. Whenever she asked questions, she also made sure that she expressed her own thinking. So back to Uemura-san, please. Thank you. This is Uemura speaking. Now, before I go into what she has learned, I would like to, as a faculty member, supporting her in her learning, allow me to talk about the points to be learned at the placement agency. Well, first, the things that need to be learned, or points to be learned, are, well, to learn about the competencies required of social workers working at assisted living facilities, like nonverbal communication, or understanding the users, including their family and background. and also assessment, planning, and intervention for future living and assistance. And furthermore, community relations and support for clients' participation in society. So these are the things as a social worker that the trainees have to learn about. But as a trainee, what's most important is very difficult to see. Of course, there are cases in which they receive explanation, but it's not really a one-sided learning, but instead through practice, the students have to try to learn. This is the actual situation. They're not taught, but they have to try to learn through practice, and this calls for the ability to observe. Now, what I mean by that is, no matter what the situation is, you have to try to build your own thinking and try to infer and judge what the situation means. And looking at the right-hand side, the illustration, well, the client seems to be sad, showing a sad expression. And one of the important things that are not always apparent are the feelings of the client, or at the agency, you cannot meet with their families, and you can't see what they do in the recreational activities, or it could be that as environmental factors, there are various things that you could think of, but these things are not visible to the trainee. And the same is true for professionals. Professionals also have to observe and judge on their own and to provide support. So the trainees also have to observe and learn from their observation. So at the bottom, we show the observation process and the process of what the students go through. For example, it's not from the stage of intake. You have to think about how to approach the user, what to say to them, etc. So this is something. And also the conclusion, the closure. You have to judge whether that is really the end. Well, the trainees are not involved with this part, but you also have to be able to observe and understand the closure process. Now, so how do the trainees experience this observation? I describe this as 4K plus 1K, though the K is a Japanese. So this is the first letter of the Japanese expression, and I call it 4K plus 1K, so it does not translate into English. Well, in the cloud, you see a cloud here, and this is these are the important things that are not visible. And in order to observe these and understand these, this is a 4K plus 1K that you have to go through. Number one, kanjiru in Japanese means to feel, and you have to question things. I always tell the students to question things. No matter how trivial, you have to question things. For example, the picture on the wall. Whose picture is it? Why is it posted here? Etc. So these very trivial things could lead to important learnings. This is what I communicate to my students. Number two, if possible, if you come up with a question, I hope that the students come up with their own hypothesis, kasetsu in Japanese. For example, this could be that. And you should not end there, but instead go to 3, kensho, meaning verify. So especially the staffs or the tutors, well, you have to double check with them, ask them questions to verify. And also, if possible, ask questions to the user. Did something happen to you yesterday? Or something like that. And number 4, having gone through this process, you have to notice kizuki in Japanese, and then come up with another question, build a hypothesis, verify, and notice. So you have to go through this cycle. And this could be said to be the most important thing. Number 5 in the middle, value, behavioral norms, knowledge. So depending on this, the questions that you feel and the hypothesis that you come up will be different. And if you notice something, then this value, behavioral norms, knowledge will become something very rich. And after you become professional, this will become very important. This is what I communicate to my students. Well, this concept alone is not sufficient for the students to understand. So I'd like to ask Doki-san to go through her learnings over the 23 days at the placement agency. This is Doki speaking. And from here and after, I would like to share with you what I experienced during my training and also my learning. And I would like to report this based on the reports that I personally have produced, day one. Now, the theme was impact of environmental changes for users. Now, at this institution, at the end of the activity, they have tea time to get the users to be hydrated. And one user was blindfolded and drinking tea. To be honest, this was day one, and I was surprised. And I was wondering why that person was blindfolded. And as the staff, well, I thought it was maybe because of the relationship between the user and the staff, and I was wondering whether the user would not become anxious. But I was told by the staff that blindfolding helps a person concentrate on one thing. And furthermore, there are cases in which the person's muscles become tense with the slightest change. And I was told that this person does have such problems, and it could mean that the drink would get into his or her windpipe. So I learned that the slightest change in environment or the daily physical condition could put people in danger. And this was day one, but I thought that I should pay attention to such things about the users. Uemura speaking. Well, this is a rather orthodox learning of a typical case pertaining to trainees. And next, at the 19th day. Now, the theme was importance of creating opportunities for community exchange. Well, as Sekiguchi-san has mentioned, this was during the pandemic, and therefore there were few occasions to go outdoors. But the staffs put together this plan, and though there were number of restrictions, the users got to go out, and I was able to participate as well. So the users were quite happy about this. They were waiting for this day, and on the day that they were able to go out, I saw that they were all very excited. Now, I questioned what is the significance of going outdoors. I thought that it would lead to the enjoyment experience for users. That was my hypothesis. And the staff members told me that it provides an opportunity for the people in the community to get to know about the users. And if something should happen to the user, it will be reassuring that the community knows about the facility in advance. And this is reassuring to the users. And the users live in the community, and that is why it's necessary for people in the community to know about them. And there should be a relationship developed that if something should happen, they can also assist the user. It tends to be that people are focused on users, but this day, I think the learning expanded to the community, and so it was a broader experience. And next, day 21, my record here. Importance of trial and error-based efforts. Day 21. Importance of trial and error-based efforts. Well, I was approaching the end of my placement, and I focused on one person, and I had made this individual support plan and implemented this. And this person that I was focusing on had difficulty closing the mouth. And and during the pandemic, the person had to wear a mask, but he had to think about cleanliness, sanitation. And the staff did have the person practice closing the mouth, but there was this idea of making it more fun to do and thinking of an arrangement that could make it more fun. And this user enjoyed drawing and also liked shiny things. So, and also liked making accessories. So that was what gave the idea. And these shining decorative things were attached to this transparent bag and put in a straw there so as to practice blowing in to the bag. So this was fun to practice closing the mouth. And so this was the idea that I came up with. And so I tried to get the user to decorate the bag and do the blowing into the bag. And the user appeared to be very happy. Well, I don't know if this is a very effective way in terms of practicing to close the mouth, but I planned this together and got the user to do it. And so I think that this was in itself quite meaningful. So even small things like that can turn into a process, and continuing the process is meaningful. And sharing this with the user is also very important. So sharing the experience is important. So I think practical verification method is to try things out and verify. And lastly, day 22. And the theme is importance of continuing involvement with users. This person, A, has no speech and communicated by just making noises like ooh or moving the body. And this person, A, appeared to be moving the body differently than usual. I was wondering why. Maybe A was appealing that the staff should take notice of something, but I couldn't understand what it meant. And therefore, I asked this user and said, "You have something you want to say, right?" And the response was, And I got the staff to come with me, and I heard later that the person didn't feel well. So because though in a very short period of time, had been talking to this person for 22 days, I was able to notice this change. And so continuing to be engaged, I thought was very important. Doki-san, thank you very much. Yes, this was an example where learning made possible thanks to the knowledge gained over time. And on the next page, I have a description of the 4K+1 and to try to put these facts into this diagram, but I don't have time, so I'll skip this part. And I'd like her to once again share with us her learnings. This is Doki speaking. So through this practical training, I believe I learned how difficult it is to communicate and build relationships with the users. And there are things also that you can notice through continuous involvement with the users. And I also learned that the support is for the benefit of users as well as us. And it's important that you attach importance to what you see and face up to the users. Well, though it was only 23 days, I would like to cherish this experience and deepen my learning through my social work in the future. Sekiguchi speaking. Well, so allow me to provide the assessment from the training location. I think that she is a person who's capable of questioning and also thinking for herself. And also, I think that she can find new insights through experience. And as for this training focusing on ability to observe, many trainees do come up with questions, but coming up with your own hypothesis and asking questions to staffs it gives opportunities for the staffs to gain new insight. This is meaningful. And for trainings, values are important, but to verbalize values is important. Now, the depth of the trainees' learning and the process, I think, was very easy for the instructors like us to understand. Sekiguchi-san, thank you very much. And lastly, Uemura will summarize. Well, I think that at a micro and a very basic level, we have presented the learning, but Doki-san has kept in mind this framework of 4K plus 1K. She tried to think on her own, also consulted and talked with the staffs and supervisors so as to validate and confirm her learning. I think this will be beneficial in the future. Also, ability to observe is a basic skill that not only the students but also professionals need. So it is a key competency for all social workers. And on this note, I would like to conclude. Thank you for your attention.
土岐さん。
Doki-san, Sekiguchi-san, and Dr. Uemura, thank you very much for your presentation. So now we'd like to take a break. But before taking a break, I'd like to explain a little bit about how we will be accepting questions. After the break, we will have a presentation from University of New South Wales and also once again from JCSW. But we will set the deadline for accepting questions at the time when the report D by JCSW is concluded. So if you are sending in through Zoom, please utilize the Zoom function. And if you are here at the venue, please utilize the question sheets. And we will take a break, and we will resume from 5 minutes past 11 or 5 minutes past 1 in Sydney. So 5 minutes past 1 in Sydney, we will be resuming. So please be back by then.
それでは
Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time to restart. So if you can please get back to your seats. And we will continue with our field education reports. Next is from the University of New South Wales. We will receive the second report. Dr. Philippa Evans. And from the New South Wales Department of Communities and Justice, Dominique Van Gestel, as well as Neve McKay. The floor is yours.
I have the great pleasure of presenting today with Dominique Van Gessel and Neve McKay. Dominique has over 25 years experience working in criminal justice system, working in counselling and in management roles within youth justice for 18 years prior to joining the New South Wales Corrective Services as a practice manager in 2017. Dom is a social work graduate, teaching as a casual academic at the University of New South Wales since 2019, passionate in supporting the learning of developing social workers. Dominique has a strong interest in critical reflection-based staff supervision approaches and their application within corrections, being the focus of his current postgraduate study. Neve is in her final year of her Bachelor of Social Work. Alongside her studies, she co-facilitates a mothers group program for her community. Neve is passionate about social justice and advocacy, which has led her to become an ambassador for the Australian charity Red Kite, supporting young people and families affected by cancer. She is particularly interested in working with vulnerable community members, especially in the areas of social and criminal justice. Neve completed her Level 3 social work placement at Long Bay Correctional Complex in 2023, which only ignited her passion for supporting and advocating for the diverse needs and concerns throughout the prison population. Welcome, Neve and Dom. Dom, could you please give us a brief overview of corrective services in New South Wales?
Yep. Thank you, Pip, and just wanting to acknowledge everybody in the room, but also again acknowledge where we are today here on University of New South Wales and just on Aboriginal land, and acknowledging those elders past, present and the future leaders of tomorrow, just being a real privilege to be here. In terms of corrective services New South Wales, just to put it in a bit of context, just to highlight the organisation Neve worked within. So Corrective Services is part of the greater Department of Communities and Justice, which includes child protection, corrective services, youth justice, housing, and a number of other welfare-based government departments. And so Corrective Services is part of that. Corrective Services itself, as you can see in the slide in front of you, that we've got quite a large budget of over 2 million in terms of operating, or 2 billion, sorry, operating the prison system as well as the community probation services. And we employ close to 12,000 staff across all of those operations. I think it's really important to highlight, and particularly thinking about social work in the correction space, there's no dedicated social work roles, but there are certainly a lot of people like Neve and myself who come from social work backgrounds who work within corrective services. And there is some parallels with the values that the Department of Communities and Justice operates within, and parallels between those values and the core social work values of the Australian Association of Social Workers. And they include service, trust, accountability, integrity and respect, which do align with quite a number of those values that I guess are really important to us to practice as social workers. And I think we've highlighted those there, particularly in relation to social justice and professional integrity and accountability.
To help shape our discussion today, we have used a 3-stage theory model developed by Collingwood in 2005. We've found this model really helpful in assisting students link theory to their practice, as well as consider other interrelated factors such as the skills, knowledge and values they bring or are highlighted during their placement experience. The first circle in the middle is the de-identified client profile. And this circle encourages us to think about the information about our clients or the families we're working with. And this information could be gathered through assessments, risk assessments, or knowledge about the service user. This stage often becomes familiar with the client's, encourages students to become familiar with the client's world or the issues that are central to this particular population that students are working with, describing what the student has actually seen and who they're immersed with on their placement. The second circle discusses theory to inform and theories to intervene. The left-hand side addresses theories to inform and explains what might be going on in the client's world. Utilising a range of theories is recommended here. So, for example, we might be thinking about social theory, some psychological theories, biological, economic, or other development theories. The right-hand side addresses the theories that we're using to intervene with the client and the links that are linked to assessment with the identified goals of the client or the family and the desirable changes that we want to be making with the client. So often here we're encouraging students to choose 1 or 2 methods of practice to engage with their clients. The third and the outer circle is split into knowledge, skills and values. The knowledge third focuses on the formal resources of the organisation. For example, this could be the policies, the legislation, the ethical guidelines, the procedures that are available to you as a student. We also focus on the third circle about the professional skills necessary for effective intervention with clients or families. So what are social work students doing in their day-to-day practice with their clients, and how can we identify the skills that they're using to engage with these populations? We are also encouraging students in the third circle to think about the values and the ethical positions underpinning or impacting on their practical approach, both personal and professional. And often in this corrective service base, we see a lot of push and pull with our personal and professional ethical positions. So Dom, are you able to tell us a little bit more in detail about our client profile?
Yes, so as you can see in front of you, we've just given some really broad or a broad overview as to the clients with corrective services predominantly works. So the most recent data we've got from a couple of years ago tells us that there's an average of close to 35,000 people on community-based orders across New South Wales, and that just over 80% of those identify as male, and certainly 18% identify as female. And those in custody is certainly quite high. And we've seen a gradual increase of numbers in custody over recent years, that it's currently sitting just above 13,000. And again, we're seeing quite a distinction between those percentages relating to those who identify as male and female. I guess the thing we wanted to particularly highlight when we were talking about today was the significant overrepresentation of people who identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander or First Nations, that is consistent with another number of government departments, whether it be child protection, the youth justice system, or the adult corrections system. We see a lot of people who identify as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders being engaged in our system and certainly struggling to exit that system and exit it safely. I guess the other thing that's important to acknowledge, and similar to some of the earlier reflections about the youth justice space, is that there's a significant number of people in the adult custodial system in particular who are there on remand, so their sentences have not yet been finalised. And quite often when they are finalised, they get non-custodial orders. So people sitting in custody for a period of time that doesn't result in a long-term imprisonment period.
Thanks, Dom. Now, Neve, we're going to get to know a little bit about a client that you were working with while you were at Long Bay Jail, and we're using the pseudonym Matt for our discussion. So, Matt, can you tell it? So, Neve, can you tell us a little bit about Matt that you were working with when you were on your student placement?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think it's important to highlight that while I did work with a lot of different individuals, a lot of them did share a lot of similarities in terms of their backgrounds, their experiences and things like that. However, highlighting on one particular client, so Matt was a young guy, late 20s, I believe. So Matt, he grew up in a quite a disorganized household. He comes from a largely Indigenous background. He doesn't know much about his cultural background, as there's been quite a lot of familial issues historically. He came from quite a dysfunctional family. There was a lot of domestic violence. He was the eldest child, I believe. Matt was introduced to drugs and alcohol by a parent at a really young age, about 11 years old, and that he was unfortunately grew up homeless for a little while on his own. Matt left school when he was probably about 12 or 13. And Matt, he started getting in trouble with the law around that age. A lot of these charges were based on, like we touched on earlier in one of the earlier presentations, gathering those critical needs like food, clothing. One story that sticks out for me is he took some shoes off someone's front door to be able to go to school because they couldn't go without shoes. So Matt was in and out of juvenile justice system, and then in adult prison when I met him. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Neve. Now, can you tell us a little bit about the theories that you were using to work with Matt, starting with the theories that were informing your practice or your approach to think about what was impacting on with Matt in his life?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said earlier, certainly like a use of multiple theories is really critical because you're dealing with, like I spoke to the client just earlier, Matt had a really dysfunctional upbringing. He had a really challenging life. He experienced a lot of different traumas and things like that. And so systems theory was integral to sort of understanding what he has been through, what he may have been through, a really trauma-informed theory, social learning theory, attachment theory. Matt has been involved in some really difficult relationships in his life. These all theories to inform, they shape the way that you would address the client. Yeah.
Thanks, Neve. And moving to the other half of the circle, what were some of the theories that you used to intervene with Matt? And how did you kind of land on those theories? And what do they look like in practice?
Absolutely. So crisis intervention, as you can see, is first on that list there. And that's quite a big one that that you interact with quite a lot. Crisis in custody often happen quite frequently, and they can be really serious matters or quite superficial for maybe you or I. So things like if there's been issues with other inmates and things like that, often you need to react in a certain using a certain theory, and a crisis intervention is very important to navigate that situation effectively. Dialectical behavioral theory, cognitive behavioral theory, in terms of presenting groups and programs and services and things like that. A lot of individuals respond to programs and services in different ways, and these sort of behavioral theories are really important to tune into with the particular population that you're working with. For example, with some cognitive behavioral theory, doing a lot of one-on-one counselling. We did quite a lot of counselling, sort of challenging behaviours or thoughts, and how they might go about that. Task-centred practice. So speaking to Matt, so Matt was a really motivated individual. He has experienced an enormous amount of time in custody, and to be presented with an opportunity to give something a go was fantastic for him. He really appreciated that. So whether that be wanting him to contribute by, drawing maybe a picture of what he was going through at the moment, or things like that.
You spoke about task-centred theory in relation to discharge planning. Can you tell us a little bit around that and I suppose supporting Matt wanting to find employment?
Absolutely. So Matt has never had a job, an official job before in his life. He hasn't really had quite enough of an opportunity, to be fair. And so upon discharge planning is something that you conduct up to 6 months before their potential release. So one of those tasks that we did was looking for a job opportunity for Matt. And we came across a lot of barriers to that. There were lots of pushback in terms of what he can and can't do. Matt had a real passion for animals. He loved animals, and he was really interested in potentially working in a zoo when he got out. And so it was really exciting having a look at different job opportunities that are in a zoo. Unfortunately, it was quite confronting when we were doing that, because not many people who have got a criminal record like himself are able to go into a position like that. And that was,
Sorry, Pip, I just wanted to highlight too, and Neve's really encapsulated a lot of theories and approaches that I guess we're quite comfortable with in a social work context. I think it's important to acknowledge Neve also needed to engage in some approaches that are really promoted by the organisation itself. So a lot of, I guess, what we'd associate with criminogenic type theories. So certainly looking at models around risk, need and responsivity, which really guides the agency quite deeply, but also dissidence theories, which are starting to get a lot more predominance in our organisation. So I think that Neve was sort of demonstrating both that use of really core social work theories and approaches and skills, but also needing to, interplay that with a lot of criminogenic focus theories as well that are very dominant in that departmental narrative.
Yep. Really good point. Thanks, Dom. And it's good to be able to contextualise some of the limitations to the work that Neve would have experienced. Neve, I'd love you to tell me a little bit about some of the social work skills you noticed yourself using when you're working with Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. Boundary setting is a huge one, particularly in this context. I was very conscious of my age and my gender, being in an all-male environment, and often quite a volatile one. I found it, boundary setting can sound like putting up a wall, but often I found that sometimes it actually opened up a door to be able to express your needs and your client's needs. I actually found it really helpful, that boundary setting. It's crucial. I can't really stress that enough. Advocacy role with Matt, and Matt was so passionate about learning, and he excelled within a group context. He was always the first one to answer questions and things like that. And I was lucky enough to be able to advocate for a little bit more sort of work that Matt might be able to do on the side as he's and I mean, advocacy is huge, particularly in the context of corrections. It can be quite a, I suppose, limiting space in terms of what a client can or can't do, as well as for a social worker or a student. As we touched on earlier, there is an alarming disparity between non-Indigenous and Indigenous inmates. So that cultural competence is integral, particularly for the work here in Australia. Collaboration with a multidisciplinary team. I worked with a lot of different professionals, which was really exciting, but also a space that you need to navigate. Often with Matt particularly, it was exciting to be able to advocate for different roles and responsibilities that they might be interested in, but having to work alongside maybe the custodial staff in terms of safety for the client and other staff members. With those responsibilities comes a lot of sort of respect, and often you've got to kind of toe that line. Emotional intelligence, picking up, it's again, as I touched on earlier, a very volatile space. Often you're needing to sort of observe before you speak, or reading the room, or understanding what someone might be going through. Like we spoke about a bit earlier, that systems theory. So really keying into that. Problem solving constantly. There is a lot, nothing goes to plan like in life. However, in this context, they can often be exacerbated given the space that you're in. Policy, legislation, ethical guidelines, that knowledge is crucial, I found, as well, for my confidence and my ability to work in the space. Having that understanding, and that while I don't have quite a nuanced understanding as maybe my lecturers and tutors, having just a baseline, I found, gives you more of an opportunity to be able to share or speak or assist in programs or assist clients to the best of your ability without damaging them in any way. Yeah.
Can I just ask Neve a question? Because I just noticed it coming through as you were talking, and it's a conversation we've actually had a number of times, and it's not identified there. But I'm hearing you use a lot of really interesting language, and language that maybe is really consistent with social work, but very different to the language that you might hear or see or be witness to in a correctional centre. Do you want to just talk to me about the importance of language for you in that space?
Absolutely. I think you cannot discount the insight that the clients in this space have got. They have had a huge amount of experience in their life. They've had a very different experience to myself and other people. And their language is sort of, their voice is the power that they have in this context. They can't, touch you or do things like that. And so speaking and using their kind of language is really important. I think that one thing that I did come across with, as we spoke about earlier, was the way that I would explain something or go about a program or a service using my kind of professional knowledge and understanding could come across as almost a little bit intimidating potentially. Navigating also that space between thinking I know everything. I often got hit with things like that. We've got the experience, we know this, and I found it really interesting to navigate the way that I came across as a worker, and the way that the inmates would express themselves, maybe using explicit language and things like that, and challenging me to use that sort of language as well, which again comes into like those skills, just that boundary setting. And so I gave an example earlier. Let's say Matt, one of the clients said, why don't you swear like we do, or why don't you use the same language as us, and things like that. It comes across unauthentic with you not speaking that way. And I thought about it. You need to think before you speak, especially in this context. And I using that humanistic approach, just asking them, would that make you feel more comfortable, or do you understand that I am in a professional capacity? And for me, it's a little bit, I would feel more comfortable not using that language, but validating that I totally understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
And I think, Pip, isn't that great? That just really highlights too that in a space where our clients are very disempowered, or certainly social workers are in a place of, or a position of quite significant power in that involuntary context, just language in itself can be one of those things that very much creates an equilibrium with our clients, or makes a more collaborative-based relationship.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. And it's, the growth and the learning that you did across your level 3 placement was in this context was just incredible. And I think just to, as we come to the end of the presentation, I'd really like you to think about how your learning was consolidated through your supervision, through self-advocacy, through the coaching and the mentoring resources that you sought out, and any messages for future social workers embarking on a placement in criminal justice in Australia.
Absolutely. And that's exactly right. It was an immeasurable experience. You learn on the job. This is one of those situations where you can't really practice for it. You never know what's coming. And I think I was so lucky to be in a space where I was supported by my supervisor. I can't stress that enough. Having the space to, challenge or experience what was going on my own, and having the support to, you experience a lot of really difficult situations, and having someone be able to support you as much as my facilitator did, such as reaching out, making sure that I attended all of my supervisions. I can't self-advocacy as a student. You aren't a professional. You want someone that is working there. So, be brave in your learning, ask questions, give it a go. And for my message for future social workers, I suppose, in this context, go in with an open mind in every respect. Really, the way that you think, that you see the world is completely different to other people. And I just think, take that and run with it. Ask questions, be interested, and it's intimidating. However, it is such an empowering space to work in, especially as a student, where you have got that space to ask those questions and to learn from some really diverse experiences.
Niamh, thank you. And just to round us out, Dom, do you have any final reflections on the educational practices of corrective services that you'd like to share?
I've got about 10 seconds, Pip.
Absolutely.
So I think certainly it's acknowledging that corrective services is not a social work organisation as such. And so for people like Niamh and myself working within that context, it's really about us promoting those values in our own work and promoting that approach every single day, and hoping that starts to gain a bit more traction and a bit more presence within the organisation itself. And I think certainly, Pip, we're involved in a number of initiatives in trying to do that, particularly around promoting critical reflection approaches, staff supervision approaches, and even bringing that humanistic approach you were referring to, Niamh, into our work a lot more, whether you identify as a social worker or not. But so I'd say that would wrap things up, Pip. So just wanted to thank everyone who's joined us, and really hope this conversation's provided you a little bit of information and insight into Niamh's experience.
はい、ご発表ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much for the report. And the conversation between the supervisor and the trainees, we have learned a lot from you. Thank you very much. And this is going to be the last report from the JCSW. We have Ayame Hongo, and we have Hiromi Kurashima from GI-Kai, the Offenders Rehabilitation Facility, and Dr. Kyoko Kurokawa. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity today, and also from Australia and from the rest of the world, be able to share this precious time with you, and also to talk about the social work placement and the practical training. Be able to think about that together with you is a very valuable opportunity for me. Thank you. So today, the offenders rehabilitation facilities. Well, what I'm going to talk about is quite similar to what was reported earlier. So we are going to hear from Ms. Hiromi Kurashima from the offenders rehabilitation facility, and she will be her facility has been accepting other trainees for such a long time. What kind of a message that the facility is giving to our trainees will be the topic of today. And after that, Hongo, Ayame Hongo, the student of JCSW, after experiencing the training here, she decided to go on and follow her career to this justice area. So she will be talking about her experience. So starting with Ms. Kurashima, please. Good afternoon. I'm Kurashima from the Offenders Rehabilitation facility called GI-Kai. First of all, I will be talking about the rehabilitation facility, and also I will be talking about the content of the program and what I value in giving this training to the students. So using this slide first. So this rehabilitation facilities. Well, unlike other general social welfare, the place where I work is in the area of a justice system. And this might not be familiar here in Japan much. So in this process of this criminal proceedings, this is one of the proceedings that is dubbed as an anchor of the criminal proceedings. And if a person commits a misconduct or crime, he or she would be arrested, and after trial, if being convicted, he or she would be sent to the youth detention center or prison. And then, if they don't have anywhere to go after being released, they will come to this facility. And there are about 100 facilities nationwide, and we are operated under the consignment from the probation office. And together with probation officers, we are trying to rehabilitate those offenders and in the future to integrate them into the society. And in our industry, we don't use the word users, but we use subject instead. For those people who are using our facilities, they are the ones who are out from the prison, juvenile detention centers, who have been released from prison or been suspended the prosecution or the sentences. So when they don't find anywhere to go back to, that means that they don't have the house to go back to. But at the same time, sometimes they are refused to take in by their families, or some problems are there with the families. For example, being bullied by the family members or in a conspiratory relationship. So these are the circumstances where deemed to be inappropriate to live with a family. And at this rehabilitation facility, we provide the place to sleep and meals to eat for a certain period of time. And those people are expected to save up their money by working, and they are expected to go out and rent an apartment later. So let me talk about our entity called GIKAI. The people living here are males, and the maximum capacity is 15. And this is a smaller size facility in Japan. Average length of a stay is about 70 days, and this is relatively shorter than the other facilities. And this is because we are accommodating many of the repeated offenders, so their period of probation tends to be shorter. That's what I think. And in terms of the nature of their misconducts and crimes, so more than half of them committed crimes violating the Stimulant Drugs Control Act, followed by theft, which accounts for close to 50%. Other types of crimes are the bodily harm, fraud, sex crimes, murders. And we are designated as a facility to accept persons eligible for special treatment. There are about 80 designated facilities in Japan, and in order to smoothly cooperate with the social welfare system, the social workers are located. There are 6 full-time staff working, and I am the only female worker. A former parole officer, prison officers, corrections officers who have retired are working here. So let me talk about the content of the practical training. What I am looking from the trainee the most is to meet and talk with subjects, because many of us do not encounter delinquents and offenders. We tend to think they are living in a different world. That is the very reason why I want trainees to meet them face to face and see them as human beings. By talking to them, I want trainees to recognize subjects are no different from ordinary people, not someone to be afraid of, and they are in need of social welfare services. To this end, the training is mainly about talking to subjects and understand them as human beings. We ask a trainee to choose one person, assess the person, and build his or her support plan. This is a great opportunity for trainee to try out the interview techniques that they learned at college, and it is a precious opportunity to understand a person, spending a lot of time. Many of subjects are hoping to become ordinary people, want to change themselves, want to lead different lives. But at the same time, they are giving up on themselves, thinking it is too late to change or they are not good enough. Understanding subjects' life and the difficulties they face, and at the same time, trainee will consider whether social welfare could have intervened somewhere. Assessment sheet and support plan. I create templates, but this plan requires to cover items that is not easy for the trainees to ask subject, such as the time the subject committed the crime. And also some of the items to be covered force trainees to reflect on their own perception. When creating the first support plan, trainees feel depressed, recognizing their insufficiency in the knowledge. Also, they realize they did not confirm subject's intention and the plan is not feasible. The first plan tends to be incomplete. Therefore, we give feedback, encouraging trainee to recognize a necessity for them to learn more. In parallel, they visit related organizations too. For them to deepen understanding on subjects, they visit youth detention center and prison. They also participate in activities of self-help groups like DARK, and they come along with us to see how we apply for social resources at municipal government and employment offices. I want them to know the situation where each organizations are in, understand the issues, and urge them to think how they can improve the situation. Lastly, I want to talk about what I consider to be important when guiding trainees. First one is to talk to subjects. as I'm repeating myself a number of times, I want them to understand and know the subject, know the background which led to subject to cause the incident, and think, was there anywhere that the social welfare could have intervened? 2. Notice any sense of discomfort or resistance. Because what we do is different from other social welfare services, so we oftentimes feel discomfort or resistance to the way words are being used or recognized. I guide trainees to take note of this discomfort. The discomfort comes from the fact they are different from social welfare ethics and values. It is an evidence that a trainee truly acquired social work. Why the discomfort? If you contemplate on it carefully, it would lead you to the precious values and benefits that you want to cherish as a social worker. 3. Reassessing values. Because this is in a justice area, sometimes we face values and situation that is contradicting to that of social work. Also, we oftentimes are troubled with subjects' way of leading their life and their thinking. Your values and common senses may not be applicable. In that event, please question yourself. Do not stay passive. Do not adapt to social norms. Think, learn, talk, and come up with your own conclusion that you can convince with. 4. So many C's. First, for the subjects. I want to sow the seeds for the supporters of all subjects. If subjects could have consulted someone in the community with a psychological safety, they might have solved issues without causing any troubles. I believe that the social workers can contribute to preventing the crimes. The trainees, not only the subject in front of them, but to support the people who might become subject in the future. And I want them to be the supporter for them. And another one is I want to sow many seeds for growth for trainees. Practical training is an opportunity to check what you have been learning and further deepen your learning from new findings. Failure and problems will contribute to your development. I am trying to guide a trainee so that they will be eager to learn and understand more. This is going to be my last slide. Of course, accepting trainee is developing a future social worker's talents, but I think it is one of the social action. Works in justice area are not proactively advertised, so the reality of the delinquents and offenders are not known to the public. And that is why I want trainees who come to know subjects to talk about them to friends to the extent possible, and to give a presentation in the setting like this today, so that the greater number of people will know about subjects. Knowing about them eliminates prejudice, and understanding and support will be spreading. If my talk made you want to know more about them, then my seeding is successful today. And I hope you who receive seeds from me would grow them. Thank you very much for your precious time today. From JCSW, my name is Ayame Hongo. I'm in the 4th year, and I would like to talk about the report on the social worker consultation assistance, the practical training at rehabilitation facility GIKAI. So this is the report that I have submitted in my 3rd year. First, this is my theme for the practical training. The first is about the dilemma for the rehabilitation of facilities, how to coexist or contradict the criminal justice and the welfare. And two is the interactive aspects of the crimes and the environment. I would like to work in the criminal justice field, so I would like to explore my value as a social worker students. So first one is the positioning of the rehabilitation and what is the role of the social workers. Right after the practical training, I reassessed myself the positioning of the rehabilitation. I initially thought that this rehabilitation belongs to the overlap between the welfare and the criminal justice. But after having this training, I understand that this rehabilitation is inside of this criminal justice. So sharing the knowledge with the other trainees, many of the data and experiences are skewed towards the criminal justice. For this rehabilitation facilities, their ethics are very skewed, but they are not converged. That's the unique thing about this rehabilitation. And two, the theme one is the dilemma of rehabilitation. Correction, rehabilitation, and welfare are dilemma in the 4 dimensions. So about the theme one, this rehabilitation is inside of this very big crime justice, and they are coexisting with the correction and the welfare. The social workers was a kind of an alien in this rehabilitation area, and I was experiencing a number of discomforts. The surprises, distrust, and the discomfort that I felt, that is showing the difference with the welfares. In my training, one, within a correction, 2 is inside of the rehabilitation, 3 is between the rehabilitation and the correction, and 4 is the rehabilitation welfare. There are 4 dilemmas there. And this is the 4 dilemmas that I summarized. The first one is within the rehabilitation. If the sentence is short, and then you cannot save up the money, and that sort of makes the life after releasing from the rehabilitation facility to be unstable. And 2 is correction. If you drug addiction, and then you cannot go for the treatment and work, and that leads to the recommitting the offense. And next is the number 3 is the welfare and rehabilitation. So if you need to have this social community treatment, they tend to be in the custody for the full term. But they are the ones who need to have this transitional period to go into the real life. But if you are thrown into the real life, and that makes it more prone for the people to recommit. And number 3, rehabilitation and correction. If you're the offending the drug crimes, you have to report yourself to the probation officer regularly and take a test and having an interview and others. And this sort of provides this motivation, forcible motivation for the offenders not to commit this drug crime again. But it is a necessary process for them to experience the slip, but do not fall into the committing the crimes. So this current criminal system is more punitive, but do not take care of this treatment side of this addiction. If you are thrown into the prison, and then that would not allow the offenders to prevent themselves falling into committing the crime again. And number 4 is the between rehabilitation and welfare. So this is what I felt as a social work background in this training in rehabilitation. I found that the workers in the facilities are having a private relationship with the subjects there. And I have intuitive discomfort and a refusal and a critical opinion on that kind of activities. But I come to recognize that those staff are taking these subjects as the family. So I found that the bases are different from mine, and I understand the actions that the staffs are taking. And I've started to feel that it is a kind of the co-help in a community. So I respect them now. And next, number 3, the theme 2, the interactive aspects of the crimes and the environment, an application of an ICF model in rehabilitation. ICF model is a global standard. I'm sure that you have seen this model once, and I'm thinking of applying this to the rehabilitation. So discomfort equals the difference with the social welfare. So I started to think about how the social welfare should be in a rehabilitation. Why are there in these rehabilitation facilities? And this is, I think, is the reason why there's interaction between rehabilitation and social work, and how this ICF model works. So this crime is this state of the health, and then in the middle, we replace them with the health, house, and the work. And I take this crime as ICF model, from the environment to crime, not the subject themselves, but these crimes will be created because of the environment. So need to approach the environment. Otherwise, we cannot cut this flow from the environment to crime. At the rehabilitation facilities, the biggest theme is to provide the house and the food. And if you live there, your driver's license will be expired. You are blacklisted financially, and that hinders you to have the community life. And many of the offenders are having some disabilities. So if they were to just throw into the community, they would repeat the offenders. And I have witnessed that the crime will be created by the environment. To cut this tie, it is very important to approach the environment. And so let me give you some example of this delinquent boy that I have encountered. They are 16 years old, and he has committed the injury case. And first, his health state, well, he had developmental problems, and he was officially recognized as having a developmental disability in this juvenile detention center, and he was suffering from the attachment issues. So he tried to get close to anyone around him, and he has been suffering from this insomnia and housing. So from the early age, he didn't stay in a fixed place. At that time, he was sleeping over at his someone he knows, and then he had been living in some official facilities as well. And number 3, jobs. He dropped out from the senior high school, and he didn't have the job, but he was interested in a very unstable job, like a 10 million yen per year income. And environmental factors, he was brought up in a very difficult upbringing, and he had attended 5 primary school and 3 junior high schools. And personal factors, well, his IQ was 75 or so, and he was borderline intelligence, and he tended to take the violent behaviors. And when I presented this to this training reporting occasion, many of the attendants says that maybe we can do something about it. And during the training, I ran and visited the municipal governments, and I went to the care meeting as well. So the social workers' role in this rehabilitation, we are a kind of coordinating the environment and be able to prevent the crime. After finishing my training, on the last day, from the one subject, I received a very big bunch of the bouquet. And my little sister says that he or she have rehabilitated to the extent that was thinking of giving the bouquet. But I think that it is contrary. The person who is giving the flowers had committed a crime. And there was another upper trainee at the GI Kai, and I would like to show his or her feedback. If only the user had been more fortunate in their living environment, and if they had received help at an earlier stage, they would probably not have ended up going to the prison. So what all users felt in common was a sense of a social isolation and not belonging. The crime committed is definitely a part of the pre-perpetrator, but it is not everything about them. And this concludes my report. Thank you very much. And once again, this is Kurokawa who supported this training. And the reports from the two people, I was listening attentively and meeting the subjects attentively from the Ms. Kurashima's training guidance. The exchange with the subjects have deepened, and then the Hongo-san would like to lead her career in the judicial area, and that's what. And I hope that this report will be useful for your future. Thank you very much.
はい、本郷さん。
本郷さん、Professor Kurashima, thank you very much. And as of 12, we would like to conclude receiving questions. So we have a few minutes more for you to submit your questions. And now we'd like to take a break, and we will resume at 10 past 12. 10 past 2 in Sydney. So 10 past the hour, we will resume the session. So we'll now like to have a short break. Thank you.
はい、それではお時間に。
It's time for us to resume. We now like to proceed to discussion and Q&A. Section 3.
ニューサウスウェーズ
Q&A, and we have with us Murray Higgins, Senior Lecturer, Social Work Program Director, to moderate, please.
And thank you all for your insightful presentations and questions. The presenters' diverse experiences and perspectives on social work field education have provided the audience with a wealth of knowledge. We now open the floor to a Q&A session. During the presentations, you have posed questions inspired by the speaker's experiences and expertise. So today we have the opportunity to delve deeper into these topics and gain further understanding. So the way this session will work is that I will moderate the session by posing audience questions that were submitted through the group chat. While we may not be able to address all the questions due to time constraints, we will strive to cover as many questions as possible. So the first group of questions came about situations that might be confronting for students in practice. So I would like to ask Neve and Dom to come up and talk about one of the questions, which was, have you come across situations that are confronting for social work values in a corrections setting? What would you do to incorporate this experience into further learning?
Thanks, Marie. I guess to start in response to this question, it's probably really important to acknowledge that corrective services, we're working in involuntary client context. So all the clients that we're working with are there by virtue of legal mandate or legal outcome. So that creates a tension automatically for us as social workers working with involuntary clients, but also the power differential that creates. So that encountering, and I'll certainly let Neve talk to it in a moment, but that encountering of challenges to our values is a daily occurrence, I'd say quite easily. Certainly for me as a practicing social worker, and I imagine also for Neve, it highlights the importance of critical reflection. So really being able to reflect on the experiences we're engaging in, being able to talk to other social workers about that, but even being able to talk about that more broadly in the organisation and really trying to promote critical reflection as an important approach, not just for social workers, but for all staff within that context.
Yeah, absolutely, Dom. I think that's important to highlight the difference between the client population as well as the people that you're working alongside. On both sides, I myself, and I'm sure you as well, Dom, have experienced some largely confronting or difficult sort of ethical or sorry, I'm forgetting the word, ethical sort of considerations. I think particularly thinking about from clients, often as well, I think the profile of the client group can often, their personalities, I think too, play a point in sort of maybe challenging sometimes staff. I certainly found that myself. And I think what was so important, that critical reflection, having the space to be able to offload with my supervisor and really speak to why maybe you feel as though those ethical boundaries were crossed or those values, your own values may have been sort of questioned in that moment, was really empowering, actually. I think also touching on the systems theory, I mean, really thinking about that, the people that you're working with and around, what they have experienced and what they have been through, it can oftentimes be completely unique to yourself. And I think as a student, what I took away from that was often if I am confronted with a situation ethically that crosses maybe, oh my gosh, sorry, I've missed the word. I've forgotten the word again. I would often take a moment and just really think about it. I think not reacting, because often it's your first instinct to react. However, within this environment, being a social worker and remembering your own values from the profession, maybe just relaying what you found hard and talking that through, I think it's really important.
The only other thing I'd just want to add is that certainly some of my strongest social work relationships have come from working in that system, and only talking to colleagues today that you do find the other social workers who work within corrections, and that provides you safety. It also provides you that bravery that Neve was alluding to earlier in the presentation. But again, promoting that space to critically reflect with each other.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
We will also just ask a question that I think might link with students' resilience to confronting situations in placement to a couple of our other students at the University of New South Wales. And following this, we will actually invite our JCSW colleagues to comment on a similar question. So the question for our other students, thanks Neve and Dom for providing your insights, is what is the positive effect of peer support between students at UNSW. And I think this is relevant to managing confronting situations. So Ashley, can you comment on this?
Thank you, Marie. Hi, just on the point of peer support, I was very lucky to find multiple forms of peer support. So as I mentioned, I had other students at my placement with me, but I also found peer support from my external supervision group. So this was a group of about 8 to 10 students, and every week we would meet together to talk about our placement experience. And the support that I felt from that was very important because we were all going through similar experiences, but also at the same time, very different experiences. We were all placed at different agencies, and so we could all bring together all our different learnings. And during our placement as well, there were times when it would get difficult because we are balancing placement with our studies and our work commitments. And so being in a room with students who were also going through that experience, I felt a big sense of understanding from all my peers and classmates. And so I think that was such a big, strong form of support while I was going through that. And placement is 70 days, 500 hours. It's a very long experience. So not doing that alone was very helpful.
Thank you, Ashley. I will just ask one of our other participants, Gypsy, if she can also speak to the idea, the positive impacts of peer support between students at the University of New South Wales. And then we'll hand over to our JCSW colleagues.
Thank you, Murray. I'm Gypsy. I'm a third-year student who's actually on placement at the moment, which has so far been an incredible experience. I've also been lucky enough to have some peer support on site and a similar experience with our external supervision and our I have another UNSW student with me, but I'm also lucky enough to be part of a peer mentoring program on campus here that where third-year students like myself can support first-year students with their academic skills and their understanding of theory to set up the frameworks for them to underpin their practice when they go out into the field. So that's been not only of benefit to them, but also a benefit to me, getting to know first-year students and to see how they understand things and consolidate that knowledge for myself. But it's also really important to build those relationships. So when we do go out into the field or when we are on prac, that we have that backup, not only from the university, but the relationships that we build for ourselves.
Thank you so much, Gypsy. Now, I would like to invite our JCSW colleagues to comment on whether there is a similar peer support system at the Japan College of Social Work. So over to our colleagues.
I'm Doki. In my case, during my field practice, I was receiving supervision once a week. But though placement agencies are all different, I was able to share with my peers about our experience, what was good, what was bad, where I thought I failed. And so I had this opportunity to meet with my peers once a week. And I come to discover things, they tell me things, and encourage me to try out those new things. That's all. One more student, please. This is Hongo speaking. And again, once a week, I had an opportunity to come to my college and meet with other peers who were training in different places. And so we consult each other, ask each other what it's like at their placement agency. In my case, I was seeing the juveniles struggling, and there was the issue of attachment and how to approach this was something that I was able to learn from other child welfare facility trainee. So it's a good learning experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful responses. The next question from the chat is posed to some of our Australian students again. And this question is, what is the level of social work recognition or social status of social work in Australia? So we're going to ask our students to share their perceptions of this from their placement experiences. Thank you, Ashley and Neve.
Hi, I will just be talking about the recognition of social work within my placement agency, which is the Shopfront. I cannot speak too much about the status of social work in Australia as a whole, but I can say definitely at my agency, there is a big value and respect placed on the role of social work. And that's why at the Shopfront, it's not just lawyers, it's also lawyers working with a social worker. At the Shopfront, we recognise that many of our clients' criminal and legal issues are very closely linked with their social issues. So this can range from poverty, homelessness, child abuse and maltreatment when they were younger, early exposure to drug and alcohol. And so if we solve the legal issues without addressing the social issues with the help of a caseworker or a social worker, the client can just end back in the same spot even after we resolve the legal issue. And so at the Shopfront, we cannot emphasize enough how important social work is to work alongside legal assistance and other services as well.
Yeah, and just speaking on that as well, I think that here in Australia, our social discourse really has a lot to say about the sort of hierarchy of professionals, particularly in this sort of helping setting. I found working in with such vulnerable individuals who have got quite high needs in terms of legal needs or psychiatric needs, things like that. Oftentimes, a social work response or social work need is sometimes overlooked, or potentially an alternative profession, say, that might in our social discourse, like a psychiatry or a psychologist, often maybe because of their sort of hierarchy within that kind of professional identity, often is prioritized, I'm trying to get across. And often social work is seen maybe more sort of a welfare and often maybe not prioritized over those more kind of I guess accredited professional identities, which is an interesting sort of conflict to come across, especially when you're so passionate about the work that social work can provide for clients and things like that. So I think here in Australia, it's valued. We can see that with the jobs that are available and the opportunities for social workers. But I think particularly it can be one of those jobs that you often have to, raise your voice a little more to be heard. But thank you.
I would like to ask our Japanese colleagues also to comment on this question. Would some of the panel members please share with us the social status or the recognition of social work in Japan?
Well, let me try to answer. When you gave us the question, I thought it was quite difficult, frankly speaking. I have been a social worker for quite some time. And when I introduce myself, I say I am a social worker, and I'm often asked, what's that? But I'm getting less and less questions. So I do believe that the recognition is going up, maybe not the status, but the recognition is spreading. That's my personal impression. However, social workers, what do we do, or what is our positioning in society? Well, it seems that social workers ourselves have different perspectives on that. So what kind of work do we do? Where do we work? And what kind of practices do we carry out? I believe, well, I won't say there's only a few people who know, but it's not as if everybody knows what social workers do. So that's the feeling I have. Even if I have been a social worker for some time, I have been asked what a social worker is in the past very frequently, but it's becoming less and less nowadays. So, Kurashima-san, how do you feel? This is Kurashima speaking. Well, I think the recognition of social workers are improving recently. The people who come to the facilities after they are released from jail, for example, when I say I am a social worker, there are many people who understand what we are. So thank you. From 1989, social worker and psychiatric social workers, the system was established, and I believe that has helped push up the recognition of social workers as a whole.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful answers. We may return to that question because it's such a fundamental question for our profession, both in Australia and Japan. However, I would like to invite one of our colleagues, Robin Webb, and her colleague Martina Josephson, to come up and discuss the role for professional social work in think tanks. So the question was, is there a role for professional social work in think tanks like federal, national, regional planning, or policy making? And if so, what designations are made available to social work professionals? So I'll ask my colleagues, Robin and Martina, to speak about this, and in particular to speak about the opportunities that they have been creating for our social work students here at the University of New South Wales.
Thank you so much, Marie, and thank you so much for the question. It's a fabulous question and is particularly pertinent, I think, in the world that we all live in today. Is there a place for social work in think tanks, whether they be international, domestic, or local? Absolutely, there can be a role of social work, particularly social work skills, knowledge, values, and beliefs. As we grapple with the many issues that exist in the world today, whether it be peace and conflict, whether it be water security, whether it be food security, whether it be migration issues, you can absolutely see a place for social work in those spaces. I think in the work that Martina and I do, there are a number of organisations that we could use as an example of where social work could contribute to think tanks in some of those spaces. And I think some examples of this may be particularly domestically. You could look at examples in peak bodies that we place students in, ACOS, which is Australian Council of Social Services, the Refugee Council, Unions New South Wales, Homelessness New South Wales, are all organisations that lobby government and provide broader advocacy on issues that affect communities, particularly disadvantaged communities and vulnerable communities that exist in the community. And they can feed grassroots information up to government in the hope of changing some governmental policies, legislation that affects people that live in those communities. I think internationally, we're all very familiar with organisations such as the United Nations and many of the agencies that are under that, whether that be UNICEF, whether that be UNRWA, whether that be UNHCR, whether it be OCHA, whether it can be international work organisations. And there is absolutely a place for social work in those organisations too, as change agents, using evidence-based practice to feed into broader scale lobbying and advocacy with decision makers. I think examples, and Martina, I think you can speak really very personally to some of these in terms of local organisations. So in Australia, we have lots of non-government organisations that will often work together to lobby government and in broader advocacy space. And perhaps, Martina, if you could talk to some of your experience in that space.
Of course. So I think in terms of the word think tanks, there's it's not somewhere where we think about social workers straight away, but there's definitely capacity for a lot of knowledge and information transfer in that space. I can think of a lot of non-government organisations where there's really sector collaboration. So it's around bringing together communities of practice, opportunities for evidence-based practice from what's happening in the field, coming together as social workers and professionals to then lobby government, provide evidence to change decisions at a broader level. So around policy change and around research with those community organisations to influence policy. And a lot of that time, it's not social work roles that are in those think tanks. It's not a designated social worker, but social workers have a lot of knowledge and skills to bring to that space. And we see it a lot. For example, I'm aware of so many communities of practice. I guess in my field of practice, that's around forced migration and sexual and gender-based violence, and the capacity for the homelessness sector, the family and domestic violence sector, the forced migration sector to come together and talk through some of the issues that they're facing individually and what is shared, and then lobby for those changes at a policy level. It's really powerful knowledge, and social workers bring a mindset that's a lot more holistic and encompasses many areas that some other professionals might not think about or bring to that space. So really it's an opportunity for collaboration, for lobbying, for advocacy, but that's based in the evidence or what people are seeing on the ground, not just about what we hear about sort of at a broader level, but this is what we're seeing every single day in our work. This is what we think needs to change, and providing a space for that.
Thanks, Martina. And I think just picking up on one of Martina's points, if you scratch the surface with many different people who work in a number of different spaces, whether they be policy officers, project officers, community development officers, politicians in Australia, people, members of local council. If you scratch the surface underneath those job titles, you may well find a social worker. So they're not traditional social work spaces, but the skills that students learn whilst they're studying social work are super transferable and can be transferred into a range of different spaces in a range of different settings, and they value add to those. And in terms of that broader advocacy and that opportunity to participate in think tanks, particularly useful. So I hope that helps answer that question. A great question. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that thoughtful response. And if I may, I would like to pose the same question to our Japanese colleagues. We wonder if there is a role for professional social work in think tanks in the Japanese context, whether that be at a national or federal level or in regional planning and policy making.
So this is Uemura speaking. So when it comes to think tank, what we sort of image, we need to sort of set the ground whether we are talking about the same thing. But when it comes to think tank here in Japan, well, private companies are researching on the social issues and give some advice to the national government. That is what we call the think tank. So they are private organization, so they need to make a profit. That's the kind of image that we have for this think tank. So, well, I am one of the social worker as well. So for the theme that the national government see as a challenge or issues, they would consign some study group or the workshop to the think tank, and sometimes I was invited to that kind of a meeting venue. And in that event, the national government has the budget to conduct this kind of a study group or the workshop. So it's more like a top-down approach. The bottom-up issue raising. From that perspective, that is not happening by the think tank, but more of like a rehabilitation facilities or the facility for disability people. So when the people are living there, if they found something that is hindering them for leading the normal life, if there is a commonality, and then the people there would think that that might be the social issues. So how other people working in those facilities can identify those are common issues? That would be the first step. And then need to raise that to the governmental level. That might be leading to what you call as the role of the think tank. That's what I thought. But in this setting, we are talking about the self-effort. So looking back, when it comes to consultation, probably we are weak. That's something that we need to work on. The students around the age of 20, without having the real-life experiences, are majority. So first, what they need to do is to absorb what I call as ability to absorb. They need to develop that kind of a capability, and that will be the main thing that is happening in the field at the moment.
Thank you so much, Uemura, for your thoughtful discussion.
So may I add my comment? So this is Kurokawa, the faculty member of the JCSW. I would like to apologize and change my comment. 1989 is the area that started this qualification for the social workers, but the psychiatric social worker system has started from 1999. So this is a correction. And the think tank, Professor Uemura, what he mentioned, I totally agree with that. And social action is included in the training or the practical training. So in that respect, the advocacy to the national government or to take part in these governmental organizations, I am seeing quite a lot of the social workers who are working in those fields. Even the graduate of our university has become the policymaker in a regional government. So many of the regional government policymakers are having different views from the national government's MPs, but we have many number of the social workers working as a policymaker there. And many of the social workers are quite active in this network that is quite active in solving these poverty issues. And their group is working on the government or protesting against the government as well. And the law related to the refugees and immigrants, those laws have revised that is to the negative to the immigrants and refugees. So the social workers associations conducted the study groups, and we have done the very large-scale lobby activities as well. So having a social worker as one's identity, and based on that, and then start the social actions, that is something that I am starting to see more.
Now I'm going to change the direction of the discussion. One of the questions that was posted in the chat was about the organizational practice learning that Jenny and Ashley and Jane presented on in their discussion. And the question was, what are some of the organizational operational skills that are used at Shopfront Youth Legal Service in practice? So I'm going to invite our student Ashley to come and speak to that. It's one of the answers that she prepared but was not able to speak about in depth in her original presentation. So the question is, what are the organizational operational skills used at Shopfront Youth Legal Service in practice? Thank you, Ashley.
Thanks, Greg. Concepts and skills that I learnt were from Jenny's course. So this was organizational practice, which we learn in term 3 after 2 terms of our placement. In particular, at the Shopfront, I noticed a really big demonstration of leadership. In our course, we learn about leadership in the context of social workers as leaders, but also working in agencies where social work might not be the only discipline. We might be working with doctors or nurses, and in my case, lawyers. And in those organizations where we have leaders who aren't social workers, I noticed an organizational practice that was very important was I was very lucky that Jane, our principal solicitor, she understands and appreciates the value of social work in the Shopfront. So her style of leadership leads the attitude of the organization towards social work as a whole. It allows other lawyers to understand that they can come to our caseworker and social worker to help their clients as well. And another organizational practice and concept that we looked at in the course and as well in my placement was multidisciplinary and interagency collaboration. So as I mentioned, this is collaboration between social work and other fields, such as the medical field, the mental health field, the legal field. And the organizational structure of the Shopfront is a joint partnership between a law firm and a non-government organization and social welfare service. And so this collaboration allows for the client's concerns to be addressed holistically. So we're not just looking at their legal problems, we're also looking at what's happening outside of their legal problems. And so those were the 2 concepts that I learnt from Jenny's course and I could see applying in my placement.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Now, there are 2 other questions that have been posed in the chat. Unfortunately, I think we only have time for one more question. And the question that I wanted to pose to our student, Neve, was related to the model that Neve, Pip and Dom presented on in their presentation about corrective services. So the question was, is narrative therapy also relevant in the Departments of Communities and Justice context? So Neve, could you help us understand that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Marie. I think this is a fantastic question. Narrative therapy plays a huge role in corrective services from my point of view, particularly the sense of a narrative, a story, their experiences. I think they have a lot of the clients that you work with, what they have been through has been so, in some cases, traumatic and life-changing that it's difficult to stray away from that sort of sense of belonging to a particular way of life. And I think it's really empowering the use of narrative therapy, particularly in the corrections context, to again, as we spoke about earlier, sort of the volatile nature of the population that you work with within corrections as well, utilizing narrative therapy is a really constructive way to understand another person's experiences and to maybe develop sort of a little more rapport, as well as to kind of expand on what they have experienced and their strengths and the capabilities. And I think it's really important in this space, particularly to drive that sense of hope and support. So thank you. I think it's a great question. Did you want to say anything?
Thank you so much, Niamh. Now, the final question that was posed that I think, unfortunately, we won't have time to get a discussion going regarding was some research that recently came out about compassionate cities. And I think that it might be a good jumping off point for further international conversations. So the discussion that we had hoped to have was where does the concept of compassion appear in social work education and practice? For us at the University of New South Wales, we have established 3 values within our field education program, and one of those values is compassion. However, we think that that's a 360-degree value, that compassion should be shown to students in relation to their experiences, as well as compassion shown to clients of social work services, as well as compassion for field educators and university staff. We all have that responsibility to grow and to demonstrate our professional values in the work that we do as social work educators and in developing social work graduates. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but thank you all so much for your active participation in this question and answer session. Your thoughtful questions and contributions and attentiveness have enriched the discussion and allowed us to gain even more valuable insights from our esteemed speakers. I extend my sincere gratitude to all of the speakers for sharing their additional wisdom and expertise during this session. Your willingness to engage with the audience has been truly appreciated. And finally, a big thank you to everyone who participated in this workshop. Your contributions have made it a truly enriching experience. So this concludes our Q&A session for the International Seminar on Social Welfare in Asia and the Pacific Rim. And I hand over to our final speakers for the day. Thank you so much.
はい、ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much. And to all the participants, thank you very much for those very significant questions. And also to Professor Mary Higgins and others, we thank you very much for your contribution. And we would like to proceed to the last session, session 4, conclusion. First, we have from JCSW, Professor Machiko Ohara, who will be giving her final comments, please. Well, first of all, I'd like to, on behalf of our college, thank you, all of you, for organizing this workshop. And also, I say this on behalf of the Federation of Social Workers of Asia Pacific Region. And I believe that there were 5 areas where we had in common. First is to secure a meaningful and quality field placement experience. Supervisors and university faculty form student-centered teams and collaborate organically. The second common point was focus on deepening understanding towards the users of social work providing institutions through practice. In particular, at the University of New South Wales, as field placement, the focus is not only on clients, but also empowering social work students to acquire management skills, actively search for and develop resources, and take action with the government. Such active learning is something the Japanese field placement can learn from. Number 3, as presented from JCSW, we focus on ability to observe from micro to macro social work skills. Students learn how to apply diverse technologies, techniques during the placement, and master basic technologies in their fields. Number 4, through the field placement experience, students can integrate the abstract concepts, theories, and knowledge they acquired in class with what happens in the field. This opportunity to have such integrated learning. In other words, both in Australia and Japan, students acquire capability to analytically learn from the complex reality, capture conceptually, and sort the reality. This leads to conceptualizing practical experience and trains them to theorize or develop theory. Number 5, the aim of this seminar was to search for a common ground for collaboration. Currently, in the world, we are witnessing a number of wars in different parts of the world, and social insecurity is also on the rise. Meanwhile, there is growing awareness of movements related to global social issues such as racial discrimination and climate change. At today's seminar, the audience may have taken interest in the acknowledgement of country, the First Nation people. We constantly need to be sensitive to human rights and have critical thinking towards social justice, and at the same time understand the local culture. We need to be sincere towards and form and maintain relationships with clients. So we need to acquire such ethical practice skills. This requires us to offer cross-border placement where such ethical practice can be offered. For the development of social work education in Asia Pacific, we hope to continue to hold workshops like this. In closing, I would like to thank Professor Mary Higgins and Lisa Zambalat, Professor Lisa Zambalat, and Professor Philip Evan and others for their contribution, as well as the students from the university. I would also like to thank Associate Professor Victor Virag and other faculty members and students for their contribution. And I recognize that there have been a number of people who worked behind the scene at JCSW, and to the interpreters as well. I thank them, and to the participants who participated both in person and online, I express my heartfelt gratitude. Thank you.
はい、小原先生どうも。
Thank you very much, Professor Ohara. Next, from the Australian side, I would like to ask Professor Lisa Zamberlan, Pro Vice Chancellor, to say a few words in closing. So, Professor, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, everyone. Welcome to colleagues. Really good to see you again. My colleagues from Japan, it was a pleasure to meet you last year. Really good to see you again this year. Thank you so much. Marie, Philippa, Jenny, you continue to be lights in this university. Thank you for bringing us together. Dropping into this late in the afternoon, such a privilege to hear the students and colleagues speak about such whole dimensions of humanity and what we need to do to protect that. So thank you. I come from a discipline as well that is at the edges of traditional professions and traditionally recognized professions. It's so important to hear the work that you do, so important to continue to pursue in advocacy for human beings in all of the spaces that you're working in. Such a privilege to hear this. It absolutely made my day. So thank you. Formally, I would like to close. It is with great pleasure that I conclude this international seminar on social welfare in Asia and the Pacific Rim. Over the past few hours, you have explored the critical role of social work education in supporting future practitioners for a globalized world. I extend my sincere gratitude to the co-host, the Japan College of Social Work. Sincerely, thank you. On behalf of the University of New South Wales, I thank you for your vision and collaboration in bringing this important event to life. Your dedication has facilitated valuable exchange of knowledge and fostered connections across our borders, and I hope that continues, particularly in the think tank and policy space and advocacy space that you do. I want to acknowledge the support provided by the Japanese Association for Social Work Education, the Japanese Federation of Social Workers, and other esteemed organizations. Your commitment to advancing social work education is incredibly commendable. Thank you. A special thanks to the National Consumers Cooperative Union of Japan and Community Chest of Japan for their generous sponsorship, making this seminar accessible to a wider audience. This workshop has provided a platform for stakeholders, incredibly important future leaders in our students, members, and field instructors to share their experiences and perspectives on the field of education in our respective countries. The insights gained from these diverse voices will undoubtedly contribute to strengthening social work education in a global connected context. I trust the spirit of collaboration and knowledge sharing nurtured during this seminar and across the years may continue to equip future social workers with the skills and understanding necessary to address the evolving needs of our world. Thank you once again to all of the participants, organisers and supporters for making the seminar a resounding success. I wish you a safe and productive journey home. Thank you so much.
サンバラン教授。
Thank you very much, Professor Samberlan. So we have concluded all the schedule on the agenda. So people here at the venue and people online, I would like to thank you all. I'd like to thank the coordinators, the speakers and panelists for your participation. And we have heard about new endeavors, and also we have this opportunity to further connect together. And with that, I would like to end this symposium, this seminar. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
.会場の皆さん、通訳、そして IT の皆さん、いろいろご尽力いただけて、昨日からご準備いただいてますので、会場の皆様、もうオンラインは切れたと思うんですけども、拍手を持って感謝をお伝えしたいと思います。よろしくお願いします。